Thanks for joining me this morning, Malcolm. I wanted to obviously jump into the conversation about your new venture and what you're doing there. I wanted to give the people a little bit of background about yourself and kind of let folks know why it's important that we kind of talk to you today. You were a star athlete at Notre Dame, played professional football for a few years. Once you finished with your career, you transitioned, made a complete switch over into investment banking. And then recently you decided to make a change. You launched Langdon Park Capital, which is a real estate investment firm based here in West Adams. Why now? What was the decision behind that move? And what's the vision for the company?
So first of all, Matthew, I want to say thank you. Just the opportunity to sit down and build with you is something I don't take for granted, because I know how hard you've worked to build this platform and to tell our stories. So I certainly appreciate just the chance to build the narrative and make sure everyone knows what we're doing, why we're doing it, and probably more importantly, how we got here.
Sure.
So,
sure.
The story begins as many of our stories do. I'm a Black man. First and foremost, I had the blessing of being raised in a very conscious household. So my father and my mother planted this seed many years ago. We're here in South LA right now, but I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. in a time when that city was 85, 90% people who looked just like I did.
Right.
That was everyone from our mayor to the hustlers on the corner, down the street from the house where I grew up. But our teachers, our clergy members, our mentors, our coaches were all people who looked like my father, all people who looked like me and my younger brothers. And that gave me a sense of pride in who I was. And so at an early age, I learned that, you being gracious when you called me a star player at Notre Dame. I was a player at Notre Dame. I was on the football team for 4 years and was fortunate enough to have success there and play in the National Football League, but I never thought of myself as just a football player. I learned really young kind of who I was and learned to embrace all of that. And so the transition that you spoke about, that transition began long before I actually stopped playing football.
Right.
In my mind, I was never put here to just be an athlete.
Right.
And for a lot of us, those are the narratives that we're told.
As you're going through this journey and you realize that your professional career is over, right? You were telling me a story one time that, you kind of made the rounds of trying to figure out what was next and didn't necessarily go the way you had planned, right? Can you tell that story briefly and kind of how that led you to going back to pursue an MBA and kind of put you on the path that you are going down now? So
first of all, as you well know, there's either going to be a chance in your life for you to be humble or life is going to humble you. And that story begins with me getting humble. So I finished a playing career in my mid-20s. And at that point, I had reached a pinnacle in that space. So I thought it was going to be really easy for me to reach out to Notre Dame alums, to corporate sponsors from the Pittsburgh Steelers. I was living in Pittsburgh at the time, and walk right into the next career. I must have taken 24 meetings with CEOs of big banks, CEOs of publicly traded companies, all of whom had ties to me only through football. So either they were Notre Dame alums, but they knew me as a guy with the helmet on who played for Notre Dame on the football field. And very quickly in each of those meetings, that's what they reminded me. So I'm walking into those meetings thinking we're going to talk about a job opportunity. We're going to talk about a chance for me to join this firm in some leadership capacity. And they wanted a story about Lou Holtz or Jerome Bettis or Cordell Stewart. And after a handful of those meetings, I realized their narrative on me was much different than the way I saw myself, but I also needed to get a technical skill set so we could have a conversation on equal footing. And it was humbling, but it was necessary. It was necessary, and that's what prompted me to think about, number one, entering the workforce at a much lower level. That's one of the big challenges for athletes. You reach the pinnacle of your career at a relatively young age, and when you transition, you got to think about how many years it took you to get to that sports pinnacle.
And now you're switching lanes.
And you got to start right at the same space that you started when you were beginning your journey on the sports arena. But it was necessary for me, and that was the beginning of, I got to level the playing field. I got to level the playing field so the narrative will be mine and not this CEO who's sitting across from me and still only sees me as the guy who played football at Notre Dame.
Yep.
Even though I moved into a different space.
Right.
But in reality, I didn't have the technical skills to join a bank at that point. There was nothing I could have done that would have, certainly not at my NFL salary,
Right.
that would have been valuable to any of those companies. And so I had to go back and obtain the skills to compete in that workforce. But you can go to class and get those skills. Right. You can study and get those skills. A lot of what would allow me to reach those heights as a player, you can't go to class and get that. And so combine those intangibles with, I had to humble myself in the classroom, and the transition was possible.
Okay. When you went back to get your MBA, did you know at that time that you wanted to go into real estate, or was that something you fell in love with or got passionate about during the process?
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't. I just knew that I wasn't qualified to speak to people at investment banks about a job opportunity.
Okay.
I knew I wasn't qualified to speak to potential investors about some venture that I wanted them to fund, and I needed to get those skills. What I did know, though, and this was again back to my roots in Washington D.C. What I knew was I wanted to work on building communities. That was like a very simple goal, and I didn't necessarily know which route I was going to take to get there, but I knew access to capital had to be involved. And so that started the path towards, all right, well, working in finance. Working in finance will give me access to capital. And so real estate is literally the built communities. So that became my goal as I proceeded through business school. But, it's always better to be lucky than it is to be good or even to be smart. I graduated from Carnegie Mellon in 2006. The real estate market was at the very top, and a lot of big banks were looking for MBAs to come work on their real estate desks, and that's how I got my first opportunity. So it was not necessarily anything that I willed to happen. It was just really good timing. So I entered the real estate market as a banker at a time when there was a lot of activity in that space. And so that was obviously really beneficial for my career.
Right. Well, a lot of it is doing the prep work on blind faith, right? And then hoping that the door will reveal itself when you get there. And so you went back to school, got the technical skill set that you felt you needed. Opportunity presented itself. You jumped in with both feet. Obviously, 2006 might have been a great time to get hired into real estate. 2009 was probably a rough time to be in the space, right? But you persevered, actually flourished, ended up leading commercial real estate banking. You led real estate banking for JP Morgan. You're executive director for community development banking most recently. Can you talk a little bit about your motivations for wanting to, not necessarily wanting to leave the bank, but wanting to step into this new opportunity with Langdon Park?
Yeah, so that's probably a better way to frame it. Stepping into a new opportunity, and I look back at the time I spent working inside of large institutions, and I have nothing but gratitude because number one, I had to learn the rules of engagement. I had to learn the industry. I had to build a skill set as a team member at a large institution outside of just the classroom, and that afforded me that opportunity. And I'll also say this. Those institutions, so I started my career at Bank of America. I left B of A in 2012 to go to JP Morgan. Both of those institutions have amazing resources, and that's human capital. Those are financial resources. And because I was always, really focused on the built community and either one of one or one of very few in my respective groups at those banks, those firms were also really good about allowing me the latitude to direct their philanthropic dollars towards causes that were important to me and the Black community, whether it was recruiting Black analysts and associates for my group or partnering with organizations like the Brotherhood Crusade. Those institutions always stepped up and did the right thing. So to some degree, I never would have had the opportunity to do that level of community building at scale without being at those amazing institutions. But the other thing that I came to realize, those institutions, just like the U.S. government, just like our school system, just like the justice system, those institutions aren't necessarily built with positive change for us in mind. And I would say there's probably no better CEO on Wall Street than Jamie Dimon. And I got to know Jamie well during my time at JP Morgan. He's been very vocal about the need to really democratize access to capital for Black Americans. But he's the CEO. And there are 240,000 employees, and JP Morgan's a publicly held company. He's got shareholders and stakeholders, but he's got shareholders to be accountable to, and banks to some degree have to be risk averse. That's why JP Morgan has performed so well over the last couple cycles. And in banking, kind of anything that looks different is a risk. So whether that's investing in a new market or investing in Black business owners, that typically looks different. And so, the clarity of 2020 really helped me make this next move, because I understood that large institutions were always challenged in trying to build relationships with risky investments, risky owners. And I say risky, I should be using air quotes, because there was nothing risky about the business thesis. That being said,
just not something they're comfortable with. And
that's
so
right.
We need you to color inside the lines.
The real positive, though, the real positive of being at those institutions for as long as I was, is that I was able to build genuine relationships with business partners, with other CEOs who definitely wanted to be a part of the solution. And one of those became a business partner of mine. I can't stress enough. There aren't a lot of things that have transferred from playing football to being in finance, but without question, being a great team member, being accountable, building partnerships that last in good times and in bad times, that's definitely transferred. So when I was thinking about leaving JP Morgan to launch Langdon Park Capital, I knew doing it alone would make it a very difficult endeavor. So I had to think about who shared the values, who shared the vision, who could support this endeavor, and help make it an institutional platform that was far less risky for an institution like a JP Morgan, a Goldman Sachs, a Morgan Stanley, you name them. All these organizations we'd love to partner with, but we have to build an institutional platform, which is what we're well on our way to doing. So it's not a journey that we're on alone. But we do have to lean into what makes us different. That's how we're adding value.
But you've assembled like an all-star, an elite team of folks like yourself, highly educated, tremendous amount of experience in the space, everything from community development banking, underwriting, M&A, capital markets, and doing it at a high level for global institutions, right? And so now stepping off into this venture, I don't know, it really strikes me as what is possible when given an opportunity, right? When given an opportunity to go to elite institutions, when given an opportunity to work in elite spaces and to build out processes and people in those spaces, and now given the opportunity to manage a fund, right, with significant stake from Kennedy Wilson, among others, really makes the options limitless, right, in the directions that you can go. Speak a little bit about the platform itself, what your investment thesis is, and what you envision the firm growing into over the next 3 to 5 years.
So you just gave the best possible commercial for our senior leadership team that could ever have been written, right? And I would just change one thing in there. I didn't give our senior leaders the opportunity. They each earned it.
I'm sorry. When institutions give us the opportunity.
That's right. And I would say when we step into those spaces, it's because we've earned it as well.
Yes.
You often find the diverse team member at a large institution is overqualified in every way.
Yes.
Academically, from where you had to start to get to that room space, But that actually makes for better outcomes, right?
100%.
You got all the calluses, all the scars. You've been working out 2-a-days for your entire life to get to the same spot that your counterpart may have just walked into.
Yeah.
And so that makes you a better team member. But that being said, our thesis is largely, number one, we are real estate professionals. We are finance professionals. We've been trained at the best institutions. We've done large transactions. But the common theme for each of us is that we're also very conscious about where our responsibilities should lie in terms of lifting others in our communities. So this is the first opportunity for each of us, career-wise, professionally, to apply that part of ourselves to what we're doing from an investment thesis. So Langdon Park Capital is a real estate investment company. We manage a series of funds that own and operate commercial real estate. But within that, we own and operate commercial real estate in submarkets where we can actually enhance the quality of life for Black and Latino residents, period. That's not something that, it doesn't matter how many years you've been in private equity. It doesn't matter how many institutional investors your platform has. If you don't have a senior leadership team that has cultural competency in West Adams, in Inglewood, in East Oakland, in Southeast DC,
shooting in the dark.
It's going to be very difficult for you to go into those submarkets and truly create value.
Yes.
You can buy stuff.
Yeah.
You can own properties, but you aren't gonna be an engaged and responsible owner like we strive to be. And you know, that to me is our differentiator. Like that is what makes us different, because there's literally billions and billions and billions of dollars of capital chasing commercial real estate deals. Very little of that is actually focused on how do we not just improve the value of the real estate that we own, but how do we create real opportunity for the people who live in these buildings or work at these buildings. And for us, that is that's the reason that we've been so successful to start, and literally we're just getting started.
Yeah, and that was kind of where I was going to go next. One of the the central tenets, unfortunately, of capital investment is typically in urban communities or inner cities or whatever, in Black and brown communities, is that displacement is a feature of investment, right? In some ways, it's viewed as a necessary, unfortunate but necessary component of capital investment in the pursuit of turning a profit, right? But in the statement that your firm released in a press release when you first launched, you felt as though, based off your experience at JP Morgan and in the industry, but also your experience just as a member of the community, that it didn't need to, not only did it not need to be that, right, but it was a competitive advantage that you could recognize how to generate attractive returns while also strengthening the fabric of the community, right? What gives you that confidence to take an investment approach that, we all understand that there's value and that untapped value that we see that others may not see, right? But now you're going out with other people's money, right, to actually put that to work. What gives you the confidence that you can make that happen?
Because I've seen it. I've lived in communities where I grew up in Northeast DC. My brothers and I were fortunate to be raised in a 2-parent household. We had a single family home, meticulously cared for. We didn't have a gardener. My brothers and I were the gardeners. We didn't have painters. We didn't have maintenance people. That was my dad and I. But
so you were always in real estate. But you just didn't know it.
100%. And I was unpaid labor at that time too. But our house was also 3 blocks away from public housing. And the care that we gave to our home and the value that we maintained in our home was so much different than what we saw in Montana Terrace or Brooklyn Manor, which literally 3 blocks away and 6 blocks away from where I grew up, because this was a home that we owned. This was a space that was our residence and our community and our haven, not just a place where we rested our heads. And that is what we're applying to the investments that we make. A perfect example, we're bidding on a property in Baldwin Village, which is in the heart of South LA. It's adjacent to the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall. It's 2 blocks away from a brand new Kaiser Permanente healthcare facility that was built in 2017. It is less than half a mile from the most affluent Black neighborhood in all of the West Coast, Baldwin Hills. But it's dense, it's urban, and for many years, this particular property is 55 years old. For many years, there's been not just limited investment, I say disinvestment in this community. And so in Baldwin Village, you see real social challenges. You see schools that don't perform as well as neighboring schools. You see less investment in business opportunities in that immediate submarket, despite the fact that, like I just said, this is dense, it's close to the freeway, it's 7 miles away from the Pacific Ocean. There's no reason that families who live in that community shouldn't enjoy a high quality of life. This particular building is 40% economically vacant, 22% physical vacancy, 40% economic vacancy, meaning tenants have stopped paying rent in a submarket where there's 5% vacancy.
Right.
Why is that? The previous owner didn't just mismanage the property, he did not manage the property.
Right.
The previous owner has bars on the window, cage as you enter the building. So you literally feel like you're walking into a federal correctional facility as you walk home every day. So one of the first things we would do, remove the bars, take the cage away from the front door, security lights go up, we landscape the front walkway. Those are amenities that they don't cost much, and every single resident automatically says, I'm coming home,
Right.
versus I'm coming to a place where I gotta guard what I'm walking in with.
Yes.
So those are some of the simple things, but on top of that, the real value add for property like that. So we got nonprofit partners, the Crenshaw Family YMCA, 5 blocks away from this particular apartment project. Crenshaw Family YMCA recently renovated thanks to Russell Westbrook and Brand Jordan. They are the last YMCA in the 26 YMCAs throughout LA that don't have annual memberships. So we're scholarshiping families who live in Baldwin Village, not just at our property, throughout Baldwin Village, to be able to send their kids to this YMCA and have annual memberships. All of a sudden, you have an amenity. So we didn't have to build the Equinox-style gym at our facility. We didn't have to pay an exorbitant amount of money to have that amenity for our tenants. It's already there. We're just creating a partnership with the group that is invested in the community just like we are. And those are the sorts of things that our residents deserve. Now your quality of life is enhanced because number one, you're coming home to a place that feels like home. Number two, you have your gym. You got your after school program, and if you're a 2-parent household that works until 6:30 at night and your child gets off of school at 3:15, you have something productive that is in your community. And oh, by the way, the executive director at this YMCA is a Black woman who is also highly focused on how she can uplift the community. So those are the sorts of partnerships that we bring to the projects that we own. And when you build in that way, you don't have to increase rents by 30 or 40% to get real value, right? You just think about, how do I make the expenses manageable? How do I add value to tenants' lives with services that are already available in this community? And now this is a place that people don't want to leave. This is a place that people take care of. So the returns can be achieved. You just have to look at them from the tenant's perspective, not just the owner's perspective. And
you're acquiring and preserving in a way that allows you to add value to the existing residents, or the existing community members.
That's right. And look, we've seen, because like I said, the namesake for our company is an actual place. Langdon Park Rec Center is where my brothers and I were raised. This is my version of the Crenshaw Family YMCA. This was also 3 blocks away from my house. It was where I saw volunteer coaches and mentors teach me how to swim, play basketball, karate. There was a library attached to it. But this was also, in essence, a mixed income rec center. So there were families like mine who grew up in single family homes, playing right alongside families who lived in public housing. But that rec center was our shared space. That was our shared space, and that was amenity that the entire community could enjoy. And that's what I thought about, first of all, when thinking of naming the company. I want us to think about how we can build real community and really nourish dreams and hopes. We all deserve, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, having our version of Langdon Park allows us to pursue happiness.
Yeah.
In addition to the first two, which should also be rights of ours as well. So mixed income is a big part of how we avoid gentrification, thinking about building real community.
What advice would you give to recent graduates or folks who are thinking about getting into a career in real estate, just from, you know, obviously sitting on the other side 20 years in now? Is there like one tidbit that you would share with folks who are interested in learning more about our space?
So first of all, and I'm still seeking advice myself.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big one for me, is to always be a lifelong learner. I would definitely say, you know, the things that got you to that space. If you're a college graduate, you already know about the value of working hard. You know about those things. It's really important for us to know ourselves. You have to have real knowledge of self, because the world may give you a narrative that is completely false about who you are. It's also important for us to love ourselves. You have to not just know this is who I am, but you have to have a sense of pride in who you are, but then you have to work to build yourself. So that was me going back to school. I had no technical skills around reading a financial statement, and I had to go build that. And you know, it's been an amazing blessing to be able to transfer that knowledge to other young people who may not have had that skill set either. And then the last thing, and this is not me, this is my dad. I would say, although you can absolutely learn something from everyone and any situation, when you are taking advice, you should probably make sure you align yourself with someone who's actually done whatever it is they're advising you to do.
It's
like
helpful,
that's I've been fortunate to have some of the best business mentors.
Yeah.
My partner at Langdon Park Capital is a company who's done exactly what we're trying to become in terms of scale. They've built one of the most successful platforms in the space, and they've been a partner in every way. So when I go speak with our partners at Kennedy Wilson about how we should structure our fund, how we should go talk to this investor and why, what the incentive fees should be in our fund, I know that they've done it. Right. They have 30 years of expertise. Right. And I would say that's true for whether it's the property managers we select to manage our assets, whether it's the GCs that we hire to work on renovating our projects. We gotta have people who've done whatever it is they're advising us to do, and I would say that advice is universal.
So what's the significance of two entrepreneurs sitting down in a black barbershop in Inglewood, which has obviously, the barbershop has been the center, right, the heartbeat of the economic ecosystem in black communities for 150, 200 years, right? But for you, what's the significance of us having this conversation in this space today?
So, and you said it, for many years, this was one of the only spaces where we could be entrepreneurs. This was a service that is uniquely black. You know, the care, there's been a while since I needed a barber for what's on top of my head, but the care that we require in grooming ourselves, presenting ourselves to the world, that often comes from someone who looks just like us. And this space is one, just like the space that Langdon Park Capital is leaning into, just like in the building LA, it's only successful if we are at the center of that space. And then the other reason that is so important here, so David Warren is the proprietor who's sitting behind my left shoulder. So the brother's a master barber, but in this space, you get more than just grooming. Through the pandemic, this brother offered counsel and goodwill and a safe haven and fellowship and resources to the community and his clients. And for many people, that may have been the only interaction they had with someone who was not in their immediate family. And that continues, obviously, in and outside of the pandemic. But these types of spaces, for us, are authentically ours. We just happen to be sitting, at the corner of La Brea and Manchester in the path of growth. SoFi Stadium is less than 2 miles away. SoFi Stadium is where the Los Angeles Rams and the Los Angeles Chargers combined to spend over $2.5 billion to build a brand new facility in one of the most historically significant Black and Latino neighborhoods in all of Southern California. So we have to maintain our foothold in this community, and what we provide is much more than, so the sign outside says platinum cuts, but there's much more than just barbering going on in this space.
Yeah.
And I want that same energy. When you walk into a Langdon Park Capital owned property, this is an apartment building, it's an industrial warehouse, but we also hire Black brokers to find that space. There was a Black GC who worked on renovating that kitchen. There was the Crenshaw YMCA, which is providing after school programming. It's much more than just an apartment building or an industrial warehouse. And so the symmetry and the analogy could not be better. We need to find ways to continue to own our spaces and lean into what makes us successful in those spaces.
That's it. And we need more brothers like yourself out here doing this. I'm excited to see what you are able to accomplish over the next few years. As you grow, I have no doubt that you're going to be successful with this venture. You got the right mindset, the right strategy, and the right why, right? Most importantly.
I appreciate that, brother.
Brother, I appreciate it.
Great to deal with you, man. Thank you, Matthew.